It's funny how you can wake up one day and realize that your life has become a slow-motion train wreck, all while you're busy pretending everything is fine. That's how it felt for me when I finally acknowledged that my marriage with Maria was falling apart. 15 years of ups and downs, laughs and tears, all crumbling under the weight of unspoken resentments. She'd started to pull away, the warmth between us turning into a cold, distant ocean. I could sense the resentment radiating from her, and I felt it deep down in my gut. "I feel neglected, Paul," she said one night, her voice edged with frustration. "We need to do something about this before it gets worse." At first, I shrugged it off. Work had been stressful, deadlines piling up like dirty laundry, and I was emotionally drained. I didn't think we needed therapy. It felt like throwing money down the drain for something we could work out ourselves. But guilt clawed at me. Maybe I was the one who had let our marriage slip. Maybe it was worth a shot to give her what she wanted, even if I didn't believe in it. "Fine," I said, biting my tongue, trying not to let my irritation show. "We can see a therapist, but I don't think it will help." Maria's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope, and I knew right then that she was serious about this. "Thank you. I really think it could help us," she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. I felt a small twist of something, but it was buried under a heap of doubt. When we arrived at the therapist's office, I was immediately hit by the polished ambience, warm colors, cozy furniture, and that calming aroma of lavender in the air. I almost laughed. This wasn't some miracle spa. This was our marriage we were talking about. The therapist, Vincent, walked in, and I had to admit he had an air of confidence about him. Handsome, with an easy smile, he seemed genuinely interested in our well-being. But as I sat there, watching Maria practically beam at him, I felt like I was fading into the background. "Let's start with you, Maria. How do you feel about your marriage?" Vincent asked, his gaze focused solely on her. Maria launched into her spiel, pouring her heart out about how she felt unloved and unappreciated. I sat there, a mix of embarrassment and annoyance brewing inside me. It felt like a public trial, and I was the accused. I tried to interject, to explain my side, but every time I opened my mouth, Maria would shoot me a look that silenced me. "Paul is just so busy with work," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I feel like I'm living with a ghost." Vincent nodded, his attention never wavering from her. "It sounds like you're feeling very alone, Maria. Is that right?" "That was it. I was the ghost, and she was thriving on the attention Vincent was giving her." I could feel the anger bubbling beneath my skin. I wanted to scream at her. How could she not see how hard I was trying? But instead, I just clenched my fists and took a deep breath, hoping this would pass like a bad cold. As the sessions went on, it became clear that Vincent was a catalyst for change in Maria. She blossomed under his attention, gaining confidence as she expressed her feelings. It was almost like watching a flower bloom right in front of me, and I was standing there, rooted to the ground, helpless. "Paul, I deserve more than what you're giving me," Maria said one evening, her tone clipped. "Vincent gets me. He listens. You're just distracted." "Distracted?" I was working my ass off to provide for us, but every time I tried to voice my frustrations, she'd shut me down, painting me as the villain. The more she went on about Vincent's support, the more I could feel my heart sink. It was as if she had found a lifeline in him, one that I was failing to provide. I wanted to confront her, to tell her she was being ridiculous, but a part of me was terrified of what that confrontation could lead to. I had no evidence, just a gut feeling gnawing at me. The final straw came during one of our sessions when Vincent suggested we try an exercise to help us connect better. Maria's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I watched her eagerly nod. "Let's take turns sharing what we admire about each other," he said, his eyes shifting between us. I couldn't do it. I felt like a fraud, listening to her rave about how wonderful Vincent was while I sat there in silence. When it was my turn, I just shrugged, barely able to meet her gaze. "I don't know," I mumbled. Maria's disappointment cut deeper than any knife. "You could at least try, Paul," she snapped, frustration pouring out of her. "This is supposed to help us." In that moment, I realized just how much I had lost her. As I sat there, feeling more alone than ever, I knew I had to change something, or I would lose her for good. But change was daunting. and all I could see were the cracks in our marriage, widening by the day. I never thought I'd become the kind of guy who goes snooping around his wife's life like some paranoid detective. But after a few weeks of those therapy sessions, I started to notice things, small, subtle shifts in Maria that sent alarm bells ringing in my head. She was becoming secretive, and it wasn't just about therapy. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was just the therapy working its magic, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maria started staying later after her sessions, claiming she needed to talk to Vincent about personal growth. Personal growth? More like personal betrayal, if you ask me. Then there were her clothes. Gone were the comfy sweatpants and oversized tees she used to lounge around in. Now, she was dressing provocatively, slipping into tight dresses and heels that seemed more appropriate for a night out than a therapy session. I didn't want to be that guy, jealous and controlling, but my gut told me something was up. "Where are you going looking like that?" I asked one night, unable to hold my tongue any longer. "Out with some friends," she replied nonchalantly, tossing her hair back like she had no clue how it made me feel. "Friends? You don't look like you're just going for a casual dinner." I shot back, my voice laced with irritation. "I'm not a child, Paul. I can dress how I want. Besides, don't you trust me?" she said, a slight edge creeping into her tone. Trust? That word echoed in my mind, taunting me. How could I trust her when she was spending more time with Vincent than with me? Then one night, as I was winding down from a long day, I overheard her on the phone. She was in the bedroom, and I was on the couch pretending to be engrossed in a show while I eavesdropped. I heard her giggling, and talking intimately with someone. My heart raced, and suspicion clawed at me like a wild animal. "Yeah, I can't wait to see you again, Vincent," she purred, her voice dripping with something I hadn't heard in a long time. Happiness. I felt sick to my stomach. Who the hell was she talking to like that? It couldn't be Vincent. She wouldn't be that brazen. But the more I listened, the more it felt like my worst fears were confirmed. My gut instinct was right, and the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Maria was having an affair. I spent the next few days in a haze of anger and doubt, replaying that conversation over and over in my mind. Each time I looked at her, I saw the woman who had become a stranger, someone who was playing me for a fool. I needed proof. I needed to confront her with something concrete. The following week, when Maria left for a therapy session, I made a decision that felt wrong but necessary. I followed her. I felt like a creep, but the thought of losing her to some sleazy therapist ignited a fire in me. I parked a block away, watching as she walked into the office. The world outside felt surreal, and I sat there gripping the steering wheel like it was a lifeline. Time crawled by until I finally saw the lights in the building flicker on. A wave of nausea washed over me. I couldn't just sit there any longer. After about 30 minutes, the lights in the therapy room went out. My heart raced as I got out of the car and moved closer to the building, trying to remain hidden. I edged up to the window and pressed my face against the glass. That's when I heard it, the unmistakable sounds of passion, muffled but clear enough to send me spiraling into a rage. It was like a scene straight out of a nightmare, and I was trapped in it. I could feel my fists clenching, my breathing growing rapid as the reality of the situation sunk in. Maria and Vincent, together betraying everything we had built over the years. Consumed by anger and disbelief, I didn't think. I burst through the door, my heart pounding in my ears. The moment I stepped inside, I was met with the sight of Maria tangled up with Vincent on the therapy couch. Their heads snapped up, eyes wide in shock. Maria's face turned white, and she scrambled to cover herself, while Vincent awkwardly tried to find a way to hide. It was a pathetic sight, and it only fueled my fury. "Paul!" Maria gasped, her voice a mix of shock and panic. "What are you doing here? What am I doing here? What the hell are you two doing?" I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. "This is what you've been doing behind my back. You're really going to sit there and play the innocent wife while screwing your therapist?" Vincent tried to speak, but I wasn't interested in his excuses. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and enraged all at once. "You think you can just play with my life like this? You've destroyed everything we built, Maria." Maria's pleas fell on deaf ears as I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I hit record. I was going to expose this betrayal for everyone to see. I wanted the world to know what kind of person she was. "Please stop," she begged, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We can talk about this." "No," I said coldly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "There's nothing to talk about. You've made your choice." And with that, I stepped back, capturing every moment of their shame in a single video. I couldn't wait to show her what real consequences looked like. I stood there frozen, a wild mix of emotions colliding in my chest like a hurricane. The sight before me felt surreal. Maria, my wife of 15 years, entwined with Vincent on that damned therapy couch, her face caught between surprise and guilt. Their expressions went pale as they realized I was there. And for a split second, the world around me faded away, leaving just the three of us in that cramped room. Maria scrambled to cover herself, a frantic look in her eyes, while Vincent, caught off guard, backed into the corner like a scared animal. The humiliation washed over me like ice water, chilling every part of my being. My heart raced, pumping adrenaline through my veins, fueling the anger bubbling to the surface. "How could you do this?" I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. "How could you betray me like this? You're supposed to be my wife. And you." I turned to Vincent, my anger morphing into pure disdain. "You're just a pathetic excuse for a therapist, taking advantage of your clients." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Maria's eyes darted between us, her facade cracking under the weight of her betrayal. "Paul, please, I can explain," she stammered, desperation creeping into her voice. "Explain what?" I barked, incredulity mixing with my rage. "How you've been screwing the man who's supposed to help us. How you've been lying to my face while I've been working my ass off to provide for us." I felt my hands shaking as the reality of the moment sunk in. "You think this is something I can just ignore?" With a sudden clarity, I realized I had to take control of this situation. My marriage, my dignity, and my life were all at stake. I pulled out my phone, the screen bright against the dim light of the room, and began recording. "Paul, no!" Maria cried, panic etched across her features. "You don't have to do this. Please, we can talk about it." I could barely hear her words over the pounding of my heart. "You've made your choices, Maria. Now it's my turn." I shot back, shaking with rage. "I'm going to show everyone the real you, the lying, cheating wife you've become." Vincent's face turned a shade of crimson as he attempted to make a break for it. "You don't need to do this, man," he said, his voice trembling, but I wasn't in the mood for sympathy. I shoved him back down into the chair, the strength of my anger surprising even myself. "You stay right where you are," I growled, glaring at him as if I could set him ablaze with my gaze alone. Maria was pleading now, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, Paul, this isn't what it looks like. I never meant for it to happen. Not what it looks like." I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the silence of the room. "What exactly does it look like, Maria? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been screwing your therapist behind my back." She looked at me, desperation in her eyes, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I had once loved. But that fleeting image faded as quickly as it came, replaced by the cold, hard truth of what was happening. As I continued recording, I wanted to capture every moment, the shock on their faces, the realization of their betrayal. I wanted everyone to see how low they had sunk. "This is going to everyone," I said, my voice steady, almost chilling. "Your parents, our friends, anyone who deserves to know the truth about you too." Maria's pleas fell on deaf ears as I watched her crumble. She looked so small and vulnerable, yet it only made me angrier. How dare she play the victim when she was the one who had turned our lives upside down? "Just think about what you're doing," Vincent said, his voice shaking, trying to reason with me. "You can't just destroy us like this." But I was beyond reason. "You've already destroyed everything. This is the least I can do." I felt a surge of satisfaction knowing that I would expose them both. They were going to face the consequences of their actions, and I was going to make sure of it. The sight of them, so entangled and ashamed, only fed my desire for retribution. I was done being the unsuspecting husband. Now I was the man who would expose their lies for the world to see. As I stood there, phone recording and emotions swirling. A strange calm washed over me. I was taking back control of my life, and no matter how much it hurt, I had to go through with this. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity. I was fighting to reclaim my identity from the ashes of betrayal. Do you think you can just walk away from this? I asked, my voice low but intense. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed, Maria. I won't let you get away with this. And with that, I clicked the stop button on my phone, feeling a mix of triumph and sorrow as I faced the reality of what was happening. My heart pounded in my chest, a relentless reminder of the pain that lay ahead, but I was determined to see this through. I wouldn't be the victim anymore. I would be the one in charge. I stormed back home, my heart still racing from the confrontation, adrenaline pulsing through my veins. Maria's face, twisted in panic, haunted me as I replayed the scene over and over in my mind. I felt like a coiled spring, ready to snap. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was a calculated assault on everything I held dear. I had to respond, and I knew exactly how. As I sat at my desk, I felt a mix of anger and clarity wash over me. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about exposing the truth. I pulled up the video on my phone, the recording of Maria and Vincent tangled together, and my stomach churned. But I couldn't back down now. I had to make them pay. I began by sending the video to Maria's closest friends and relatives. It felt cathartic, like I was unleashing a torrent of truth upon the world. You deserve to know who she really is, I wrote in the accompanying message. This is your friend, your sister, your daughter, showing her true colors. Each click of the send button felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I could almost hear the gasps of shock and disbelief from the recipients, and the thought made me smirk. Maria had spent so much time building her image, and now it was crumbling like a house of cards. Within hours, my phone buzzed relentlessly with notifications. The scandal spread like wildfire, engulfing her life in an inferno of gossip and judgment. I watched in grim satisfaction as the chaos unfolded. Friends who had once sung her praises now questioned her integrity, and the whispers followed her everywhere. Did you hear about Maria? I can't believe she'd do that. Her therapist? Seriously? What was she thinking? It was exhilarating to watch her world spiral out of control. But deep down, I knew this wasn't enough. I had to turn up the heat. I created a social media account under an anonymous name and crafted a post detailing our relationship, highlighting the good times, the love we had shared, and culminating in the shocking video. I poured my heart into the words, each sentence dripping with honesty and pain, while also painting Maria as the villain. It's incredible how someone you thought you knew can become a stranger overnight, I wrote. What happens when the person you love betrays your trust? Here's a glimpse into my world of heartbreak. The post went live, and within minutes, the notifications exploded. People began sharing it, commenting, and tagging others. It became a wildfire, racing through social media and beyond. Days passed, and the story gained traction. The video made its rounds, shared among countless people, and soon it caught the attention of local news outlets. My heart raced as I saw the headline. Local man exposes wife's affair with therapist. Maria and Vincent became the focus of a national scandal, plastered across news sites, with headlines that felt like daggers. I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. This was the reckoning I had promised myself. I watched as Maria's phone buzzed incessantly with calls from her family and friends, trying to get answers, trying to grasp the reality of the situation. It was an avalanche of consequences that she couldn't escape. She had wanted to tear down our marriage, and now she was reaping the whirlwind. I remembered the look on her face during our last confrontation, that desperate plea for understanding. But there was no understanding left in me. I had played nice for too long while she had plotted behind my back, and now it was time for her to face the fallout. As the days turned into a week, the scandal continued to unfold. Maria found herself backed into a corner, her professional life crumbling as her colleagues and clients started distancing themselves. They didn't want to be associated with a cheater, and it showed in her empty office and the hushed whispers in the halls. Vincent, too, faced the repercussions of his actions. His professional license came under scrutiny as investigations began to unfold, revealing his unethical behavior as a therapist. He had crossed the line, and now he was about to pay for it. Maria tried to reach out to me, her messages filled with anger and despair. "You're ruining my life, Paul," she texted, but there was no sympathy left in me. "You've done that yourself," I replied coldly, watching her messages pop up one after another. "Please, let's talk about this. I'll do anything to fix it." I didn't reply. I couldn't bring myself to even look at her words. I had given her so many chances, and now she wanted me to be the good guy again? It was too late for that. The thrill of revenge had dulled into something heavier, a mix of satisfaction and sadness. I realized that while I was dismantling her life, I was also dismantling the life we had built together. But I had to remind myself of the truth. This was her choice. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. As I sat alone in my room, watching the chaos unfold, I knew there was no turning back. I had opened Pandora's box, and now all that was left was to watch it all unravel. The fallout from my revenge unfolded like a scene from a twisted drama, and I was both the reluctant star and the director pulling the strings. The public humiliation I had orchestrated didn't just affect Maria's social standing. It shattered her emotionally. I had expected anger, maybe some tears, but I hadn't anticipated the sheer depth of her breakdown. It started one evening when I received a frantic call from her. "Paul, please, you have to talk to me." Her voice was raw and desperate, like a drowning person reaching for a lifeline. "Why should I?" I replied, trying to keep my tone cold. "You made your choices. You're the one who decided to betray me. Just listen. I'll do anything to fix this. I'll break things off with Vincent. I promise," she pleaded, her voice cracking with emotion. The temptation to feel sorry for her flickered in my chest for a moment, but I quickly crushed it. I remembered the laughter she'd shared with him, the way she had thrown our marriage aside for some twisted thrill. "It's too late for that, Maria," I said, my voice steady. "You've lost your chance. You have no place in my life anymore." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could picture her there, a broken woman, clutching the phone as the weight of reality crashed down on her. She begged me to reconsider, but I couldn't. The decision was made. After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. I had wanted to reclaim my life, but at what cost? Our marriage, once filled with laughter and love, lay in ruins. With a renewed sense of purpose, I met with my attorney the next day, armed with all the evidence I had gathered, the video, the recorded conversations, and the mountain of betrayal. "I want to make sure I get a favorable settlement," I told him, my voice steady. "She needs to understand the consequences of her actions." As we went through the legal process, it became evident how fragile Maria had become. She was like a shadow of her former self, abandoned by friends and family who no longer wanted to associate with the cheater. I watched as her phone lit up with calls from people who had once stood by her side, but were now quick to distance themselves from the wreckage. I'll never forget the day I ran into one of her old friends at the grocery store. "I can't believe what Maria did," she said, shaking her head. "I used to look up to her. It's just so sad." That word sad stung. Sadness was the last thing I felt. I had spent too long wallowing in despair while she manipulated my emotions, and now it was time for her to face the music. As the divorce proceedings progressed, I became increasingly aware of the depths of Maria's despair. She struggled to find work, her reputation now tainted by whispers of infidelity and betrayal. The once confident, poised woman I had married now wandered through life like a ghost, defeated and hollow. Vincent faced his own consequences as the investigations into his unethical behavior as a therapist began to unravel. The media coverage of our scandal had blown up, and soon news outlets were digging into his past, revealing a pattern of manipulation and exploitation. I relished the thought of him losing his license. He deserved every ounce of punishment coming his way. But as I watched the chaos unfold, a nagging sense of regret lingered in the back of my mind. Had I gone too far? Had my quest for revenge destroyed her life completely? It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I reminded myself that I had fought for my dignity. Maria's pleas for forgiveness became a haunting echo in my life, filling the spaces where warmth and love had once thrived. She reached out multiple times, each call and text a desperate reminder of what we had lost. "I miss us, Paul," she wrote one night, tears evident in every word. "Please, can't we at least talk?" But every time I read her messages, a cold fury surged within me. How could she claim to miss us when she had shattered our life for a fleeting thrill? I couldn't bring myself to respond, unwilling to open the door to more heartache. As the divorce date approached, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. It was time to put an end to this chapter of my life and reclaim my identity. I had fought hard to protect what little dignity I had left, and now it was time to move forward. In the courtroom, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. As the judge finalized our divorce, I took a deep breath, ready to step into a future free from betrayal and manipulation. Maria looked small and fragile across the room, tears in her eyes. I wanted to feel sorry for her, to offer some semblance of compassion, but I couldn't. I was done being the victim. I was ready to break free from the chains of our past. And as the gavel fell, sealing the fate of our marriage, I vowed to myself that I would never be deceived again. As I stood in the aftermath of my divorce, the dust settling around me, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Relief washed over me, mingling with the remnants of anger and sadness that had once consumed my life. I had spent so long in the shadow of betrayal, but now I was stepping into the light, ready to embrace a new beginning. The first thing I did was focus on myself. I had spent years putting Maria's needs before my own, neglecting my passions and interests. It was time to reclaim my identity. I started hitting the gym regularly, feeling the rush of adrenaline and the thrill of pushing my body to its limits. Each drop of sweat was like a cleansing rain, washing away the remnants of the pain and heartache. But it wasn't just about physical transformation. I wanted to grow emotionally as well. I began reading self-help books and diving into online forums where others shared their stories of betrayal and recovery. One night, as I scrolled through Reddit, I stumbled upon a community of people who had faced similar heart-wrenching situations. It felt cathartic to share my story, to put my experiences into words and offer my perspective to others. I titled my post "Caught in a Web of Betrayal," my journey from heartbreak to freedom. And as I recounted the saga of my marriage, the affair, and my quest for revenge, I felt lighter. The comments poured in, supportive and understanding, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. Thank you for sharing. Your story is a reminder that we can fight for our dignity, one commenter wrote, and another added, "You give hope to those of us still healing. Keep going." Each message became a thread in the tapestry of my recovery, binding me to a community that understood my struggles. Over the following months, I started rebuilding my social life. Friends I hadn't seen in years reached out, eager to reconnect. We went out for drinks and shared stories, laughter bubbling over as we reminisced about old times. I realized how much I had missed the connections I had let slip away while focused on my tumultuous marriage. Then came the moments of newfound freedom, traveling to places I had always wanted to see, indulging in hobbies I had long neglected. I took a painting class, letting my creativity flow onto the canvas like a river, each stroke symbolizing my journey toward healing. I found solace in nature, spending weekends hiking and exploring the beauty around me. It was during one of those hikes that I met someone who would change everything. Her name was Sarah, and she had a warmth that enveloped me the moment we started talking. We bonded over our love for the outdoors, and soon, our casual meetups turned into something deeper. For the first time in years, I felt the spark of a genuine connection. With Sarah, I felt safe. I could be vulnerable without the fear of betrayal looming overhead. Our relationship was built on mutual respect and honesty, two things I had been sorely lacking in my previous marriage. We laughed together, explored new places, and shared our hopes and dreams. The transformation I experienced was remarkable. I wasn't just healing, I was thriving. I realized that life was too short to be shackled by the past. The harsh lessons I had learned fueled my determination to never let anyone walk all over me again. I vowed to guard my heart while remaining open to new possibilities. As I continued to share my journey on Reddit, my story became a beacon of hope for others navigating the murky waters of infidelity and betrayal. I highlighted the importance of self-respect and fighting for one's dignity, encouraging others to reclaim their lives and pursue their happiness. Don't let someone else's betrayal define you, I wrote in one post. You have the power to rise from the ashes, stronger than ever. Trust me, the light at the end of the tunnel is worth fighting for. The response was overwhelming. I received messages from people who felt inspired to take charge of their lives and seek the happiness they deserved. It was a beautiful reminder that even in the darkest times, there was a way forward. With each passing day, the weight of my past grew lighter, and the shadows that once loomed over me faded into the background. I had escaped the chains of betrayal and emerged with a renewed zest for life. As I stood on the summit of a mountain during one of my hikes, the sun setting in the distance, I took a deep breath, filled with gratitude. I was finally free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, and the pain. I had left the past behind, ready to embrace the future with open arms and an open heart. Life was waiting for me, and I was ready to step into this new, brighter chapter.